You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Deku Enters DanMachi. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of ArgonautStrike on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. As the exam had finally started, everyone ran into the exam arena. Everyone had a different plan in mind. Some people rushed toward the center in hopes of destroying as many as they could. Others ran toward the back alley hoping that they could get the robots nobody even knew existed. But a certain green-haired teen ran onto a rooftop in hopes of using his range advantage over the other examinees, but he didn't really think about what building he was gonna use. He could barely see the ground, let alone some robots. As he turned around to head back down the stairs, and just then he felt the entire building shake. He turned toward the edge only to be met by the eyes of a massive robot about the size of the building he was on. He went over to the edge and looked at the damage left by the thing awakening. And saw it. Among the rubble, he saw a teen seemingly stuck from a pile of rubble on top. They were going to get crushed by the massive robot and nobody even stopped to look at them. Raising his right hand he shouted at the robot, "Firebolt," as he did scarlet flames shot out of his hand like lightning. But it did nothing at all, the thing didn't even slow down. More flames poured from his hand but they had the same effect as the first one. He looked down to see the person still crushed by the rubble. He turned to face the robot and remembered what he had done to get into this school. The harsh training he put himself through. The words that man had said to him. Everything came forth in an instant as a white light began to engulf Izuku's right hand. He raised it one last time, fully intent on ending this now. The sound of a bell rang out through the entire test arena. All eyes in the area turned up toward where the sound was coming from and they were met with a bright light shining off the top of a building. Firebolt. The green-haired teen shouted as the bright light consumed him, his scarlet flame turning it into a white beam. As the light expanded it consumed the entire area, blinding all who looked at it. As the light disappeared the head and top half of the robot was gone. In its place was an examinee falling off the building. Izuku turned to face the rapidly approaching ground and extended his hand hoping that if he shot the flames they would at least dampen the fall. But before he could shoot any out he was slapped across the face by a brunette girl. Izuku looked around and realized that he was floating in the air. The girl that slapped him placed her hands together before muttering something under her breath. Izuku landed on the ground with a thud, hurting his head in the process. He turned to face his savior. He walked over to her to give thanks for helping him. As he arrived he immediately regret going over as the woman proceeded to vomit all over the verdant teen. As if to rub salt into the wound that he couldn't destroy a single robot, Present Mike spoke up. "Alright everyone, put down the quirks. The exam is over." Izuku wished to disappear from the world. And yet another problem seemed to make itself clear to the fire user. The recoil from using that weird firebolt dislocated his arm. Of course, he couldn't tell due to adrenaline pumping through his body. But that was quickly fading away. So the pain was beginning to rear its ugly face. The girl vomited all over him, turned to face him, then bowed at a perfect 90 degrees angle. "I'm so sorry." The girl shouted toward her victim. Even though Izuku was in a lot of pain and felt disgusting, he couldn't help but laugh at the girl. She looked at him like he was weird, and for the most part, he was, but that's beside the point. "It's fine," he said with a smile on his face. Then out of nowhere an old lady waddled over before looking at the teen. "You ain't looking so good, honey." Izuku looked toward the voice, then had a small meltdown. It's Recovery Girl. Recovery Girl looked him up and down but had one problem. Where the hell do I embrace him? Izuku was too busy fangirling over the healing hero to notice the fact that she had no way to heal him. Then it clicked in his head that he still had a dislocated arm. Right after he figured this out, he turned the other way to show the older lady his back, the only part of him that wasn't covered in vomit. After a few seconds of waiting, his arm began going back to how it was before the exam. But now he felt exhausted. To be fair, he didn't really get much sleep last night due to overtraining himself at the last minute. So like the true hero he was trying to become, he passed out right then and there. Uraraka actually couldn't believe what she just saw. This guy just destroyed a massive robot with one attack, then passed out covered in vomit in the middle of the street. 1 week later. Izuku was sitting eating his dinner with his mum, realizing just how badly he did on the exam. He didn't destroy any robot but the 0-pointer. At least he saved that girl. As he was wallowing in self-despair, his mum left to go to the door as she heard it go. Seconds later she came rushing in holding a letter with the seal of UA on it. She was saying something but Izuku couldn't decipher it through all the stuttering and muttering. A habit he had unfortunately inherited from her. Taking hold of the letter, he looked toward Inko. "Can I open this alone?" Inko looked at him for a second before nodding. As Izuku sat at his desk looking at the letter, knowing that he had 100% failed, but who knows? Deciding enough was enough, he tore open the letter. Only for a holographic All Might to appear in front of him. Izuku was a bit disgusted by the man standing in front of him, but it was for UA, so he was willing to put up with it. As much as Izuku wanted to listen to what his future teacher had to say, he couldn't bring himself to. Basically skimming through the hologram, barely listening to what was being said. Until he heard the man say that he passed. Instantly he jumped for joy. Hearing that he passed was the best thing ever. He had proven him wrong, he proved them all wrong. He ran out of the room and over to Inko and immediately hugged her. Not even a second later the woman began crying her eyes out. A month later. Izuku was running through the halls of UA looking for room 1A. This was his 5th time in this hallway. Needless to say, he was lost. As he continued looking for his classroom, he bumped into someone. He looked down toward the victim of his fast movement. His eyes met with a girl who looked to be a bit taller than he was, with black hair tied up into a ponytail. He extended his hand to the girl. "Sorry, I should have been paying more attention to where I was going," the verdant said, trying to help the girl up. She took his hand and he pulled her up. No, I should have been paying more attention myself." Izuku was about to continue running before he turned to face the girl. "Sorry, but you wouldn't happen to know where Class 1A's room is?" The girl looked at him with a smile. "Yes, follow me, I'll show you." Izuku began beaming with joy. He wasn't going to be late. The girl took him to a room that he walked past a few times. He looked up and saw 1A plastered on the door in massive writing. "We're here," the girl said before she swung the door open. Looking in, he saw a few people, all with different looking quirks. Like a girl that was pink from head to toe, or a guy with red spiky hair. But the two he was least looking forward to seeing was a guy with glasses and a dark bluish hair color. And Bakugo. Before anyone could say anything to the two that just walked in, the black-haired girl turned around to face Izuku as she bowed. "My name is Momo Yaoyorozu, of Class 1A. Izuku looked at her a bit bewildered by this fact, as he thought she was a year above because of certain things. Bowing back to the girl. "I'm Izukumidoriya, nice to meet you." "Oh, it's the falling guy." A voice from behind Izuku spoke. He turned around to face the girl that had slapped him during the exam. "Wah, it's you. The girl I saved. My name is Ochako Uraraka, not you. The girl said with a smile. "It's you." A voice from behind Momo spoke up. The blue-haired teen from earlier was now talking to one of them. "You're the one who took out a 0-pointer. The sound of a student gasping played throughout the class. Wait, you took out a 0-pointer? A blonde guy with a black bolt going down the front of his hair said, sitting on the second seat of the second row. So you figured out that the test had other parameters? The blue-haired teen said as something clicked in Izuku's head. I judged you too early, I thought you were little more than a brute. Rage began flowing through Izuku as the teen talked. Normally getting insulted didn't really bother him, but it wasn't the insult that pissed him off. So you were in the same exam arena as me? Yes. The teen answered rather proudly. Izuku looked up toward the teen's glasses with a look in his eyes that made the hairs on the taller teen's arms stand up. So why didn't you help her? Izuku said, pointing toward Uraraka. Huh. You were in the same exam as me, you saw me destroy a robot that has no benefit for me. But you thought I had done it because I figured something out. I destroyed the robot because someone was in danger, and if you can't see that, maybe you should reconsider becoming a hero. Izuku said rather bluntly. Everyone was taken aback by what he had just said. But before anyone could say anything, a groggy voice spoke up from behind Uraraka. Sit down already. They all turned to face this newcomer, but they were not expecting to see a homeless man. Uraraka, who was face to face with him, let out a scream. Quiet down. God, it's too early for this. He said as he jumped over to the front of the class in his sleeping bag. I'm your homeroom teacher. As those words passed through his mouth, the rest of the students sat down. You can call me Aizawa. He put down a box nobody even knew he was carrying. Come, take one in your size and a map, then make your way over to the changing rooms. As the teens walked out, they saw Aizawa standing in front of a massive field sleeping bag nowhere in sight. As they all lined up, Aizawa threw a ball at Bakugo. You scored the highest among the class, so stand in that circle and throw that ball as far as you can. Bakugo gave the man a grin as he stepped up, but he got cut off before he could throw the ball. Oh, you can use your quirk. Bakugo's grin turned into a full-blown smile. He cocked his arm back and shouted. Deai. As an explosion rumbled the air around the students. A certain black-haired girl standing next to Izuku was disgusted by the boy's use of language. 705.2 meters. A robotic voice said as the number came up on a phone Aizawa was holding. You all will be doing a series of tests, by the end you will all be judged. The one in last place will be expelled. So go beyond plus ultra. The students were all shocked by this. They walked over to the 50 meters dash. Bakugo walked over to Izuku. Move it. Bakugo said as he made his way over to the start line. Izuku was about to move out of his way before Momo spoke. That's no way to talk to someone. Bakugo ignored her. After a few more people tried their luck at the 50-meter dash, Izuku stepped up to the start with a guy with a bird head next to him. Start. The robotic voice said as Izuku and the bird boy took off. Izuku was faster and managed to finish it in 6 seconds, with the bird boy just behind this at 7.5 seconds. Next up was the grip test. Izuku squeezed as strong as he could, but it didn't go very far. His score was almost palpable compared to the squid arm-looking guy. Now on to the standing long jump. Izuku actually used his quirk this time. Jumping from the start spot, in the air he pointed his hand backwards and shot the scarlet flames out, shooting him forward the rest of the way, allowing him to pass the entire sandbox. Moving on from Izuku's greatest victory yet, was the sideways jumping. As much as he hated to admit it, he was being beaten out by someone who couldn't have been more than 4 feet 5 inches. Now the event a lot of them were looking forward to, the pitch. A few people went before Izuku, some got insane scores like Uraraka, who somehow got infinity, which people didn't even think possible. But now it was Izuku's turn to go. As he walked out, he only had one thought. How the hell do I do that light thing? At the entrance exam was the first time I've used it in years, but I don't even how I used it. Come on, I've got to figure this out before I throw, or else I'll be the one going. As Izuku grabbed the ball, he walked into the ring and gave the ball a good squeeze, but nothing happened. Deciding to just wing it, he pulled his arm back into the starting form of a shot put throw and pushed outward. As he did, he shouted, "Firebolt!" as the scarlet flames shot from his hands, carrying the ball up into the air. The further the flames went, the thinner they got, but still they carried it, and carried it, and carried it. Until finally the flame disappeared from sight. The robotic voice spoke once again. 978.4 meters. Izuku practically screamed as the number was displayed. That's my range. The entire class was shocked by this, but one man couldn't just stay quiet about it. Oi Sparkles, how the F did you do that? Bakugo began walking toward him with his hands popping and going wild. But before he could reach him, the white scarf that hung around their teacher's neck wrapped itself around the blonde boy with intent to kill. There will be none of what you're trying, Bakugo, now get back in line. Aizawa said with a commanding voice that struck fear into the teens. Bakugo slowly walked back into the line while staring at Izuku with rage lying within his eyes. Now Izuku, get back in line as well, we have more people to go. Izuku began walking over to the line before Aizawa whispered into his ear. I told you to go plus ultra. Sending a chill down Izuku's spine. A few more students took their turns. Yaoyorozu created a cannon to shoot it out of. Well, you all done good, but the bottom of you will be going home now. The screen displayed. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shototodoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 4. Tenya Ida. 5. Fumikage Tokoyami. 6. Mizo Shoji. 7. Mashireo Ojiro. 8. Ejiro Kirishima. 9. Mina Ashido. 10. Ochako Uraraka. 11. Koji Koda. 12. Rikido Sato. 13. Tsuyu Ajui. 14. Yuga Aoyama. 15. Hanta Siro. 16. Denki Kaminari. 17. Kyuka Jiro. 18. Toru Hagakure. 19. Minoru Mineta. 20. Izukumidoriya. Izuku's world fell apart. It was the first day and he was already kicked out. A smile graced Aizawa's face as he turned to face the verdant teen. I lied, no one is getting kicked out. Izuku began screaming with happiness. He really didn't want to be expelled this early. Now that this is over with, we now know where you all stand. I want you all to be better next year, so aim for a higher spot. As for Yaoyorozu, try to still where you are. The Raggedy Man said. Yes, sir. The entire class yelled out toward their new teacher. Now back to class. As Izuku and his two new friends began leaving the school, Izuku finally realized how fun it was to walk home with friends. By the way, Midoriya, didn't you know you have 2 quirks? What? At the test, you used that light beam thing, but today you used fire. Uraraka explained. Oh, it's not that I have 2 quirks, I'm what's known as a dual quirk user. Basically, I have both of my parents' quirks. Except I have a mutation instead of my mom's. Whoa. The shorter of the 2 girls was caught off guard. I've never heard of a dual quirk user with a mutation quirk. Wait, back up, what's a mutation quirk? A mutation quirk is a quirk that a child can get that has nothing to do with parents' quirks. My mom can pull small objects toward her and my dad can breathe fire. So you got a combination quirk and a mutation? Yaoyorozu asked, curious about her new friend. I guess. That's so cool. Uraraka shouted at the teen. As they were about to split off from each other, the 3 decided to share contact info with one another. The next day. For the most part, UA was pretty normal in terms of actual schoolwork. Lunchtime had just ended and Izuku and his classmates were sitting in class waiting when all of a sudden All Might came sliding into the room. I am here. coming in with a weird pose. The entire class roared at seeing the top hero. Everyone but Izuku. Which did not go unnoticed by All Might, Bakugo, Yaoyorozu and Uraraka, who for some reason she couldn't explain, couldn't stop looking at the verdant teen. All Might began explaining that they were going to be doing basic hero training, but Izuku couldn't care less, so he was treating the bulky man as nothing more than background noise. Then out of nowhere the wall beside him popped up, revealing a bunch of suitcases. Izuku looked for the one with the number 18 on it. Picking it up and taking it down to the changing rooms. As the students were waiting for the last few of them to walk out, Uraraka and Yaoyorozu walked out of the hallway together while talking about something. They both looked around for Izuku, but couldn't see him anywhere. Walking over to Kirishima, who was the easiest to talk to out of the other guys. "Hey, do you know where Midoriya is?" one of the girls asked. "Yeah, he's just coming." As he said that, footsteps began echoing from the hallway as the last number of their class made his approach. Walking out, Izuku was wearing a white overtop with gray lines traveling down the inner side of his arms with black lines connecting the gray and white. Under the white overtop was a light green shirt with a knife hostler on the back for close-range encounters. The front side of the holster held pouches filled with medical supplies, armor on the top of his chest and smaller bits defending the lower arms. Going further down, he had black trousers on that tucked into his dark red shoes that looked a lot like his normal shoes and knee armor. But the two most surprising parts were his hands and his eyes. His hands were covered by a glove that was the same color as the shoes but with holes in the middle where his palm is. But his eyes were red. Like BLD red. "Midoriya, you look so cool," Uraraka yelled. "I wasn't expecting this to be your costume," Yaoyorozu pointed out. As Izuku looked around and saw all his classmates' costumes, he was astonished by the immense amount of detail some of them put in. Before anyone else could comment, another group of students rounded the corner. "Everyone meet Class 1B. All Might boomed. A girl with orange hair stepped forward first and bowed. "I'm Itsuka Kendo. It's nice to meet you all," the girl greeted. Izuku stepped forward for Class 1A and bowed back. "I'm Izuku Midoriya." Likewise. The two looked up at each other and shook hands. Izuku and Momo were walking toward the arena discussing their plan of action. "We're up against two members of Class 1B, Shiozaki and Tokage's. We don't know what Shiozaki's quirk is, but do you know what Tokage's quirk is?" "From what I saw from the recommendation test, it's something about breaking her body into pieces," Momo explained. "From a glance, it's clear Shiozaki's quirk is something to do with her hair, but what it is still unknown." Izuku continued. "Oh, me and Uraraka meant to ask, what's with the red eyes?" "It's high-tech contacts that allows me to scan the surrounding area. To look for structural weaknesses or heat signatures, allowing me to quickly detect if someone needs help somewhere I can't see," Izuku rather quickly summarized for his classmate. Momo was slightly taken aback to think such a high-tech thing could be condensed to this level. "Back to the topic of this fight, we need to come with a plan. We can stick together to face any plan they come up with," Momo said. "As it stands, that is the best course of action." Izuku agreed as they arrived at the starting position. The alarm rang, signifying the start of the fight. They decided to stick to the sides. Getting into an all-out fight without info is suicide. However, this plan backfired. As an eye rounded the corner, Izuku and Momo jumped out of their skin. Before they could even react, a tsunami of vines began flooding around the corner. Izuku was closer, so he was grabbed by the group of vines that began pulling him toward the center. Yaoyorozu was still in a state of shock before she quickly got her bearings and began giving chase. Suddenly the moving sensation Izuku was feeling stopped. He was stuck in a ball of vine. Yaoyorozu saw what her teammate had been captured by. "This is our win," Tokage said, already calling the match. Izuku opened his hand and raised it up toward the sky. Yaoyorozu smiled. "This is a bad matchup for you." "Huh?" Muffled words were shouted within the vine ball. Firebolt. As those words passed the green-haired man's mouth, the vines around Izuku burst open with flames pouring out. Shiozaki let out a scream of pain as her vines were burnt away. Quickly she broke them off. Tokage retreated to where Shiozaki was in hopes of developing some form of plan. The flames of a devil. Yep, so let me take care of him, I'll leave Yaoyorozu to you. The two girls gave a nod to each other before rushing their foes. Izuku didn't have any time to prepare as the girl broke apart and surrounded him. Firebolt. Raising his right hand he shot flames toward one of her pieces, but she moved it out of the way before it could reach her. She shot one of her pieces at him, but he managed to dodge. Her pieces are small and she can move them faster than my flames. The only way to hit her is by catching her off guard, but how? Izuku thought as he raised his right hand again. Only to lower it and dodge another piece flying at him. Yaoyorozu created a sword and shield to block and cut through the vines, even still the girl kept sending more. There was no end to the amount this girl could send, it was only a matter of time before Yaoyorozu was overwhelmed by the vines. And she couldn't even counterattack as the vine user was up in the air being suspended by the vines. Dodging and cutting, Yaoyorozu had a thought. Dodging the next few vines she threw her sword toward the vine user. Quickly Shiozaki retracted her vines to block the attack. As she moved her vines to continue her onslaught, she noticed the girl was gone. Out of nowhere a small black ball was thrown at her, she raised her vines again to stop it but was met with a loud bang. Shiozaki felt a rush of pain as she looked to see a massive hole in her vine guard. Impact grenades. Yaoyorozu shouted at her attacker. 3 more were then thrown. Shiozaki then created more vines to compensate for the amount she had lost. Yaoyorozu created 5 grenades, but because of this, she was lacking the energy to properly move, so this was a gamble. Shiozaki used the new vines to block the grenades. But she didn't notice the 2 more grenades thrown after the other 3. She saw them coming through the newly created hole in her vines and managed to stop it, but the last one made it through. She barely managed to stop it with the bare minimum vines, resulting in her being blasted back into a building. Yaoyorozu was struggling to still standing due to the lack of lipids in her body, but wasn't about to just give up now. As she was about to head over to where Izuku and Tokage were fighting, she was grabbed by vines. Shiozaki had gotten back up. While Izuku was struggling with keeping up with the lizard tail splitter user, Shiozaki yelled toward her teammate. I have captured Yaoyorozu. As he was dragging her off, Izuku's eyes widened, as did Tokage smile. He raised his right hand, but Tokage saw it coming and moved her pieces out of the way. Firebolt. He shouted as he raised his left hand toward the vine user. Tokage was caught off guard by this but took the opportunity to punch him in the side, winding him in the process. The flames consumed the vines around Yaoyorozu, freeing her from the girl's bindings, causing her to fall from quite the distance. Tokage decided to retreat to Shiozaki to check up on her while Izuku was recovering from the punch. Izuku on the other hand was struggling to breathe but made his way over to Yaoyorozu to make sure she was okay. When he arrived, she was struggling to stay awake due to the lack of energy in her body. Win this, okay? She managed to say to the teen. Okay. Izuku agreed. I have to win for her. Izuku thought. She fought to give me a chance, I can't just give up now. His right hand began sparkling with the light. Tokage and Shiozaki decided to rush Izuku as he was now alone due to Yaoyorozu struggling to stay awake and could barely move. Izuku raised his right hand as a spilt-up girl and a mountain of vines began flying toward him. The sound of a bell rang out, loud enough that even the people in the spectator room could hear it. Firebolt. He shouted as a beam of bright light shot toward the flood of death coming his way. Shiozaki in the last moment grabbed as many of Tokage's pieces as she could to avoid the beam of God. The bright light consumed the entire arena for a few seconds as everyone that became able to see it were paralyzed with shock. As the light dissipated, the havoc Izuku made was revealed. Shiozaki's vines were completely destroyed and she was blasted into another building, causing her to be knocked out. Tokai's pieces were all over the place as she was unconscious inside a different wall. Yaoyorozu, who was still awake, was in shock by the sheer amount of damage created by the blast. And Izuku had passed out due to overuse of his quirk. Team Midoriya and Yaoyorozu wins. All Might shouted into the mic piece before some robots came and picked everyone up. With the first match over, the rest of the students stood in shock. Quite the first match, huh? All Might chuckled. Turning over to the two classes. So who was the MVP of this match? Kendo from Class B stepped up. Shiozaki was the MVP. Would you care to explain why that is? At the start, she managed to capture Midoriya and separate him and Yaoyorozu. Then once she realized her bad matchup with Midoriya, took on Yaoyorozu. Also, even after taking an explosive, she kept her composure and captured Yaoyorozu. Following up after that, as the white beam of light Midoriya used, she focused on moving Tokai's pieces away to protect her. Exactly, correct young Kendo. Thank you, sir. Now on to the next match. Itsuka Kendo and Juzo Hananuki vs Shototodoroki and Katsuki Bakugo. Please head to the starting points. As the two heavy-hitting Class A members walked toward the starting point, only one of them said anything. Stay out of my way. Bakugo said rather calmly. Nothing else was said between the two. Shortly after they arrived, the alarm went off. Bakugo blasted off without caring for his partner. Todoroki was keeping up with him. Quickly they came across the other team. As Todoroki got closer, he got stuck in the ice. He looked forward to see Juzo turning his ice into mud. Bakugo made a beeline for the Mud Eater, hoping to take him as quickly as possible, failing to notice Kendo, who popped out from around a corner and punched him in the gut, knocking him back quite a bit. Bakugo was knocked into the mud, forcing him to release a large explosion in the mud to blast him and accidentally Todoroki out of it. Todoroki, using his newfound freedom, sent a large amount of ice at his two opponents. Bakugo on the other hand blasted his way toward them. Only for the ice and the hot-headed teen to clash with each other. I thought I told you to stay out of my way. Bakugo yelled at the teen. Todoroki simply let out a breath, which could be seen as the drop in temperature was drastic. This made Bakugo even angrier as he launched himself at Juzo, taking the teen out fairly fast. Kendo began rushing Todoroki in hopes to take him down before he could do anything, but was stopped by some ice encasing her feet. Team Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki wins. Later that day. As he opened his eyes, he was immediately blinded by the orange sunlight coming in through the window. He sat up and looked around and noticed he was in the nurse's office. Looking to his right, he saw Yaoyorozu sound asleep. He kept staring for what felt like an hour till a voice broke him out of his trance. See something you like? Izuku jumped out of his skin and turned around to face the voice, only to be met by Tokai's gaze. And no. He quickly stammered out. Looking past the green-haired teen, he saw Shiozaki out cold as well. It's fine, I won't tell, Tokai said with a massive smile on her face. Anyway, that quirk of yours is something else. She continued. Oh, thank you. What was that light thing anyway? Honestly, I don't know. Huh. The first time I used it was at the entrance exam, this was the second time. What the hell, I got beaten at a guy that doesn't even know how he did it. She said, sounding somehow dejected. Izuku heard the bed behind him shuffle and turned to see Yaoyorozu just waking up now. She looked around and was slightly taken aback when she realized this wasn't her bed. She quickly saw the two green heads staring at her. Were we being too loud? Izuku asked. Tokai simply shrugged. Yes you were. The voice of Shiozaki said, having been awoken by the two teens' conversation. Shiozaki sat up and looked at the three. What was that about your quirk? I don't know how I used it. You do know we have a quirk counselor? We do. The two Class A members looked over to her. Oh yeah, Vlad told us about that yesterday. Shiozaki looked at Tokage with sheer disappointment. Do you know who it is? Izuku asked. Before she could answer, the door slid open to reveal to Recovery Girl and All Might. Glad to see you're all up. The older woman said. Great job all of you, you all gave your everything in today's training, I'm proud of you all. All of the teens looked very happy to be told this by All Might of all people. Except one, Izuku looked uninterested with the top pro. Quickly the teen picked himself out of the bed and walked toward the door, hoping to get out of there as fast as he could. But a hand on his shoulder stopped him. I really am proud of you. Izuku turned to face the hero and smiled, thank you. Quickly he left the room. Midoriya was Yaoyorozu's last thought before he left the UA male bathroom. The sound of retching echoed off the walls, coming from one of the cubicles. One of the students was vomiting nothing but stomach acid. Arriving home after the first basic combat training wasn't exactly Izuku's definition of fun. His mother had been worried as Izuku came home late and wasn't answering her texts. So when he got home he was bombarded with questions about where he had been and what he was doing. After about half an hour of questioning, he went straight to bed as he was too exhausted to want to move. To be fair, he had gotten a dislocated arm healed in one day, so the exhaustion was fair, but knowing that didn't make it any better. But somehow all that questioning was much easier than what happened when he arrived at school the next day. Aizawa deiced to pull him and Yaoyorozu aside at the start of the day to talk about all the classes they missed yesterday. You two are the best scorers in the class when it comes to academics, but that doesn't excuse you from classes for a whole day. Red eyes stared daggers into the two. Yes, sir. Both of them yelled toward their teacher while bowing. His hair dropped. As long you two understand, now go sit down, class is about to start. Both teens rushed to their seats, trying not to anger their teacher any further. After a few minutes sitting waiting on the class to start, the door slid open with too much force, revealing an ashen blonde teen on the other side. He began walking over to his seat before he slammed his hand on Izuku's desk. The entire class turned to see what he was doing. Izuku barely turned to look at him. This caught Bakugo off guard. He was used to Izuku cowering and begging forgiveness. Bakugo, Izuku said, a tinge of bitterness in his voice. I don't know what you did or how you did it, but just know I'm stronger than you, Sparkles. Bakugo said, anger seething through his words. Izuku didn't say anything back, simply looked at him, then continued to face forward. This pissed Bakugo off to no end. The ashen blonde raised his right and was about to bring it down with an explosion before the cold voice of Aizawa spoke up. Class is about to start, Bakugo. Sit down. Bakugo felt a chill go down his spine at his teacher's words. Class was fairly tense after that. But what Aizawa said made the entire class cheer. Today you'll be picking a class rep. Aizawa then passed out small bits of paper and placed a box on his desk. Write your answer on the paper, then place it into the box. I'll be counting it in 5 minutes. Izuku was stuck. He could vote for himself or someone else. Deciding what he was going to do, he wrote down his answer. The screen popped up with the results. Izuku Midoriya, 2 votes. Momo Yaoyorozu, 2 votes. The rest of the class got 1 vote apart from Yuga Aoyama and Ochako Uraraka, who both got 0. Who the F voted for Sparkles? He turned his head in the direction of the 2 with 0 votes. So how are we going to settle this? The spiky red-haired teen named Kirishima asked. I'm too tired to count another vote, just play rock paper scissors or something. Aizawa, their high school teacher, said in a deadpan voice. The entire class looked at him with rage. He was treating them like children. Until one man spoke up. Ah, hell yeah, rock paper scissors is so manly. Kirishima cheered. The entire class now turned to him and realized why they were being treated like children. Izuku and Yaoyorozu walked up tension building as they made their way. Both teens fully prepared to give their all for this position. As they faced each other down, neither one about to just give up, they raised their fists and chanted. Rock! The tense was building up even higher as everyone, that actually cared, were on the edge of their seats. Paper. The final moments of their battle grew closer. Scissors. This was it, the battle was about to decide its winner, as many classmates couldn't look afraid of the answer as to who would win. Shoot. As those words came out, the two teens sent their attacker, each one hoping for the win. Izuku threw paper and Yaoyorozu, rock. The entire class roared with cheers and jeers for the battle. Izuku extended his hand. You fought valiantly. Congratulations. The dark-haired girl said as she took and shook his hand. So Midoriya is the class rep and Yaoyorozu the vice rep. They both turned to face the raggedy man with confusion. There's a vice rep? They both said almost at the same time. For the first time since they started, the man was smiling. Sit back down. Lunchtime came pretty fast after that. Before Aizawa got the chance to leave, Izuku managed to stop him. Aizawa? The man turned to face his student. I heard there's a quirk counselor, do you happen to know who that is? It's Midnight. Huh? Midnight as in the R-rated hero? Yep. Can I go for lunch now? As Toshinori Yagi was finishing up some paperwork in the staff room, he got up to take it along to his next classroom. He stood in front and flashed a smile toward Cementos. Before the door swung open, revealing the green-haired student of class 1A standing on the other side. The two stood staring at each other for an uncomfortable amount of time. Cementos was frozen. He wanted to help his fellow teacher but didn't know what to say. As they continued to stare at each other, Izuku spoke up. Ms. Namuri here? He asked. The sound of her name being said made her peek her head out of the computer it was in. Upon seeing it was a student, she frantically deleted her tab before making her presence known to the teenager. Over here. She called. Izuku took a step past the skinny man as he was still frozen from the shock of the event. Did he not recognize me? I mean, how would he? Toshinori Yagi and All Might looked like two different people after all. I guess that means I don't have to waste form time going to classrooms. He thought before walking out of the room. Izuku sat down next to Midnight and took a glance at her screen. It was on the wallpaper and he saw how she was looking at the screen before he called for her. Meaning that most likely it was on something she shouldn't have been looking at on school grounds. So what's up? The professional said. I heard from Aizawa that you were the school's quirk counselor and was wondering if you could help me with something. Sure, what's the problem? I need help using my quirk. This piqued the interest of both Midnight and Cementos. What part of it do you need help with? The bright light thing. I remember seeing you use it at the entrance exam. So what's the problem with it? I have no idea how to use it. Could you explain a bit more? She asked. The first time I used it was at the entrance exam, but it's like I don't pick when it gets used, it's like my body does. He said, hoping that made sense. Is there anything about the times you have used it that was the same? Every time I feel a rush. Trying recreating that feeling. Izuku closed his eyes and tried remembering the feeling, but nothing happened. Nothing. He stated bluntly. Anything else? Thinking about it, there was always a tingle in his hand when he used it. Trying to focus on feeling that again. But once again nothing happened. Alright, what was going through your head when you've used it? When I saved Uraraka, it was that I wanted to help her. The second time I wanted to win. Well, what do you want right now? Focus on that. Izuku closed his eyes once again. I want to be a hero, to save people, to prove those who told me I can't wrong. There we go. Midnight said as Izuku's hand began glowing. Izuku opened his eyes and was stunned by what he was looking at. His power actually activated at his beck and call. Good, now turn it off. I don't know how to. Alright, Cementos is 3A in Gym Gamma right now. I don't think so. Cementos said, not entirely sure. Good enough for me. Follow me. As they walked through the halls, multiple people kept giving Izuku a weird look. But he couldn't tell if it was because of his glowing hand or the fact he was walking with Midnight. When they arrived in Gym Gamma, Izuku's hand was glowing more than ever before. The tingling was much more intense as well. The sound of a grand bell was emitting from his hand. As Midnight opened the door without the calmness of a teacher. Once she opened the door, they were met by a single blonde topless teen training with a girl with sky blue hair and a guy with black hair that covered his eyes. They turned to look at the green-haired teen and Midnight. The girl flew over to the teen and pointed at his glowing hand. What's that? Sorry about this, but Midoriya has to use his quirk and anywhere else is a bit too dangerous. Midnight quickly explained. The girl continued with her questions. So why is it too dangerous? Let's just say that light can rip through anything with ease. The blonde boy smiled at this. The rock behind me is in the way. The boy pointed his thumb at a massive boulder. Izuku raised his right hand and pointed it at the boulder, but then stopped himself. Sorry, but could you move a little further away? Izuku asked the three teens who were very close to the boulder. Oh, sorry. The blonde man took a few steps away from the boulder. Izuku raised his right hand again, this time placing his left hand on his right arm in hopes of lessening the impact on his right arm. Firebolt. He screamed as the beam shot from his hand, bigger and stronger than any other beam he had used thus far. The entire arena was singed with burn marks. His arm was hurting, but it wasn't dislocated. What the hell was that? The dark-haired teen mumbled. That was a lot stronger than the others. Is it a charge thing then? I think so. Izuku replied. You're a first year, right? The blonde man asked. Why, yeah. That was so awesome. The girl shouted at the teen, excitement rushing through her words. You should probably go get lunch before it ends, we can continue our session later. Midnight said with a wink. The third years decided to go get lunch as well. As the four walked, the three students introduced themselves. I'm Mirio Togata. Nice to meet Cha. The blonde man shouted at the green teen. Tamaki Amajiki. That was all the dark-haired teen said, not looking at anyone. Hey, I'm Nijire Hado. So what's your quirk, how's it work? Oh, what class are you in? She asked without taking a breath. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I'm in class 1A. As they arrived in the cafeteria, Izuku and the three got some weird looks. Is he with the big three? A student asked his friend. What the hell is the big three? Izuku turned to face the three he was with. They continued to walk until a certain orange-haired girl walked up to them. Midoriya, Tamaki. You two know each other? Ha, Kendo. You know Amajiki? Yeah, we grew up together. He was my next-door neighbor. Before Izuku could speak up, red lights began flashing as an alarm went off. Mirio was the first to speak. This alarm. It means there's a break-in. Huh? Izuku and Itsuka looked at him with confusion. The five students walked over to the emergency exit but could barely get through the back of it. Izuku saw as the scattered remnants of his class were trying not to be dragged away by the horde. It's just reporters. Itsuka yelled at them while looking out a nearby window. The four watched as people were being crushed over reporters. They had to do something. The big three were about to shout, but Tamaki was lost to the students. Nijire saw someone with a cool-looking quirk and forgot all about the reporter thing. Mirio couldn't use his quirk lest he becomes as naked as the day he was born. There was no way to get everyone's attention. Izuku looked up toward the red flashing light and had an idea. He closed his eyes and focused on what he wants most of all. I want to protect people. The bright light began emitting from his right hand. Mirio, Itsuka, Tamaki and Nijire turned to face the brightly lit teen. The light drew the attention of the people close to him but not everyone. He focused harder and the sound of a grand bell made everyone turn to look at him. Everyone calm down. It's just reporters. We are not in any danger. Izuku yelled as the light got brighter. The students looked out the window to see that he was right. Calming down, the big three looked over to the teen and remembered what the light had done not even 20 minutes ago. But Izuku had a different thought. Kendo, can you punch me? Huh? You want me to punch you? Why? I want to test something. She drew her fist back and swung it at his face. As it hit him, the light disappeared. As I thought. If I can't focus on it, it can't stay active. Everyone slowly went back to eating their lunch like nothing happened. Your quirk's so powerful, all I can do is shoot lightning. The class Pikachu complained to the class Broccoli. At least you guys can shoot yours, my hardening has no range. They were on a bus on the way to rescue training. Something Izuku wasn't very good at. He was currently sitting next to Yaoyorozu and Uraraka with Kaminari, Kirishima, Azui and Ishido right in front of them. If you want to talk about strong quirks, have you guys seen Yamamo? Yeah, your quirk's awesome. Kaminari backed up his pink classmate. Oh, stop it, guys. Yaoyorozu said, a slight blush appearing on her face. Bakugo's also strong. Kirishima said. Too bad his personality is horrible. I can hear you. And I don't care. Mina replied. Enough talking, you're giving me a headache. Aizawa said from the front. After a few minutes, the bus arrived at a massive building. They walked in before Ida decided to speak up. Excuse me, sir, but where are we? We're at the USJ. The voice of another spoke up. 13 climbed the final steps. The entire class looked toward the hero. But one of them basically had a mental breakdown at seeing her hero. Uraraka was jumping up and down at a speed even All Might would have trouble matching. Today we'll be doing rescue training. 13 followed up. All Might was supposed to join us but something came up. Aizawa said as he lifted 3 fingers to 13. The rescue hero nodded in response. Alright, today you'll be split into groups. The groups will dash. Aizawa cut himself off as he turned to face the center of the building. Everyone followed his line of sight and saw a dark hole next to the fountain. Something about it sent a chill down Izuku's spine. 13 protect the students. Aizawa said as he placed his goggles over his eyes. Huh, what? Why? The pink girl asked her teachers. Villains. Was the only thing Aizawa said. Following that he leapt down the stairs. The kids made a beeline for the door only to get stopped by a purple mist. I don't think so, children. An ominous voice said, stopping all the hero hopefuls in their tracks. Without thinking, Izuku raised his right hand and shouted. Firebolt. The electric flames shot toward the mist man only to be swallowed by the darkness. After a few seconds, the flames shot back at the students. Bakugo shot in front of the class and blasted the flames. That dampened the flames when they did arrive. DMN sparkles. He shouted as he shot toward the man. Leave this to your betters. However, before he could do anything he was swallowed whole by the mist which then began slowly moving to devour the rest of the students. Izuku, like a lot of them, was eaten by the mist. Next thing Izuku knew, he was surrounded by rocks. He looked around and saw he was still in the USJ, just in one of its segments. He was alone, at least he thought he was. Midoriya. He turned to face the voice but didn't see anyone. Midoriya. Looking a bit closer he saw floating hands waving at him. Hagakure. He finally noticed the invisible girl. Stay close to me, okay? Alright. That plan backfired as they both heard a sound come from their left. Without thinking, Izuku raised his left hand and pointed it at where the sound came from. Out stepped a guy neither one had seen before. Listen kid, you put the hand down and we'll kill you quickly, okay? Izuku figured something out. He whispered to the invisible girl. They don't know you're here, so go and get help, okay? Huh, but I can't just leave you. Listen, I can keep my distance from these guys. I'll be fine. Please. Quit talking to yourself. Fine. But you promise me nothing will happen to you. I promise. She nodded. And began running away. As much as she wanted to believe he would be, she couldn't bring herself to trust the promise. Izuku turned back to the guy and decided to answer with the nicest thing he could think to say. F you. His open left hand turned into a middle finger toward the man. This enraged him. He ran toward Izuku and swung, but Izuku dodged it with ease. Compared to the speed of Tokai's pieces, this guy is nothing. Izuku placed his right hand on the man's chest and shouted, "Firebolt." The point-blank range of the flames shot the man into the air before he crashed into two guys hiding behind the rock he came out of. Anyone else? Was the worst possible thing he could have said as a group of about 5 guys walked out. Immediately he shot flames at 2 of them, knocking them out instantly. One of them began touching his head as Izuku felt his arms tense up. He couldn't move his arms. His hands were at his sides. The other 2 began running at him. One of them had a chainsaw sticking out of his head. The other one's hand was vibrating at an insane speed. As they got closer, Izuku came up with a plan. Izuku shouted, "Firebolt." The flames shot out toward the ground, breaking it, throwing the 2 off balance. Using this, Izuku used Firebolt to blast himself toward the guy holding his arms at his side. Shooting through the air like Bakugo made him want to vomit, but it was the best he could come up with given the amount of time he had. Now above the man, he swung his foot down onto the man's head, knocking him to the ground easily. He landed on top of him and stomped on his head, knocking the guy out. But Mr. VBRTR was mere centimeters away from him now. He was slow like the first guy but wasn't dumb enough to leave himself open for a counterattack. Izuku took steps back while dodging until Sawhead appeared behind him. He went to headbutt the teen while the other went to punch him, but Izuku dodged to the right, resulting in Sawhead cutting his friend's hand open. BLD began spewing out of the man's open hand. Taking his time, Izuku got behind Sawhead and shot a firebolt into the man's back. He fell like a sack of potatoes. Izuku let out a long breath as he looked at his handiwork. He walked over to the guy with an open hand and looked him dead in the eye. "Why are you here?" "F you." Izuku then raised his hand and pointed it at the man's open hand. Wait, please don't." The man began to plead. "Why are you here? To kill All Might." Izuku looked at the man and began to laugh. "As much as I would love to see that, I need him alive." After that, Izuku stomped on the man's head, knocking him out. He then began walking over to the plaza to help Aizawa. Hagakure made her way up the stairs shouting where she came from. But as she finished the staircase, she was met with a horrible sight. Half of 13's suit was torn. Uraraka and Mina were crying over the hero's unconscious body. The mist man was gone now though. As Todoroki, Azui, and Mineta made their way over the ice, they arrived to see Aizawa getting crushed by a blackbird thing. "If All Might isn't here, I'll kill some kids to pass the time." Faster than any of them could even move, the man was on top of them. The man's hand was about to touch Azui's head, until flames shot toward him. The man jumped up and dodged the flames. The teens looked over to where the flames came from and saw Izuku standing with his right hand raised. Great, another one. Get the hell away from them. The two began staring at each other. The other students made their way over to Izuku and stood behind him. Don't let him touch you, if he touches something it turns to dust. I saw him use it on Aizawa. That means Todoroki, stay and help me fight him. You two head back up the stairs. Neither of the teens stayed to argue with the green-haired student. You got a plan? Todoroki said. Yep, use that ice to defend me, I'll take him on head-to-head. That's suicide. Only if I get touched. The two teens began to get ready to fight. As the sound of metal crashing rang through the entire building, all eyes turned to look at the top of the stairs and saw All Might standing there. And he looked pretty pissed off. Ah oh. Izuku turned to face the hand man with a smile on his face. You pissed him off. As those words passed Izuku's mouth, a rush of wind slammed into Handy's stomach and placed Izuku, Todoroki and Aizawa a safe distance away. I need you two to take Aizawa to the exit. Can't, Izuku said simply. Why? This. Izuku said as a slight chime rung out of his hand. Damn it. All Might watched as the bird brain shook off his earlier attack like it was nothing. Leave anyway. Fine. Izuku said with a sigh. Izuku began walking away, not in the direction of the exit. Where the hell are you going? Todoroki asked him. Gonna go see if anyone else is in danger. He began walking over to the mountain zone. Currently, in the mountain zone, Kaminari was being held hostage. Listen, if you two put the weapons down, I'll put him down, okay? Yaoyorozu and Jiro had no choice but to listen to the man's demands. Now. The man said while licking his lips. How about you take them clothes off? The two were disgusted by this, but before they had to do anything, a white beam slammed into his side, sending him flying into a bright explosion. RPST piece of SHT. Izuku said while he walked around the corner. Midoriya. Yaoyorozu began crying, seeing him. Having been worried about her friends, she was glad to see one was all right. Izuku walked over and hugged her to make sure she was all right. After he let go of her, he turned over to look at Jiro and Kaminari. You two okay? I'm fine, thanks for the save. Yay. No problem. Izuku said, slightly confused by what Kaminari was doing. All the students turned to see the bird thing from earlier flying into the dome. Izuku decided to make his way back to the plaza to see what had happened. Yaoyorozu decided to go with him as Jiro went back to the stairs with Kaminari. Upon arriving, Izuku saw the area he had just been in completely destroyed. A massive crater was made where All Might was currently standing. Yaoyorozu and Izuku stood baffled by the show of power. The other villains were stuck in a single spot. The hand man then proceeded to break down. No, this is not how this was supposed to go, damn it. Shigaraki, calm yourself, we can still win this. How? Look, he was gotten weaker and the hostages came back. They both turned to look at Izuku and Yaoyorozu. The one with light bluish hair stared at the teens. Yaoyorozu's legs buckled out of fear. Izuku turned around to face her. His hand began to light up, but this time Izuku felt tired. Before he was using his quirk without care, but that adrenaline was gone now, so the exhaustion of overusing his quirk was finally catching up. He turned to face the villains. Come any closer and I'll evaporate you. But that didn't seem to discourage the villain as he began running at Izuku. Firebolt. The white beam shot from his hand and made its way over to the man. But he quickly dodged it as he cut the distance ever closer. But Izuku couldn't move. Hell, if it wasn't from the fear of death, he would be passed out right now. No. All Might yelled, his power failing him. As Shigaraki's right hand was about to touch Izuku's face, suddenly a bullet went right through it. Before anyone could do anything, the purple mist consumed Shigaraki and began taking him away. Know this, number one, your days are limited. Nobody said anything as the mist disappeared. Izuku then collapsed right then and there. Midoriya. Yaoyorozu shouted concerned for her friend. She placed her hand on his pulse to check if he was okay, and to her relief, he was still breathing. The teachers rushed down to make sure everyone was all right. Later that day, everyone was back at UA, having made it safely back. Due to giving their statements about what happened, the student hadn't had the chance to change into their uniforms. Most of the students were fine. The only one with any medical needs was Izuku, as he had overused his quirk, resulting in him passing out. Izuku was fading in and out of consciousness but woke up to hear two men talking. This class is strong, they won't be beaten down by this. Without thinking, Izuku spoke. Why, yeah, and I will be stronger than All Might, he said as he once again lost consciousness. The two men looked over at the sleeping teen and one of them asked, how much did he hear? So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author ArgonautStrike on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.